So I'm Associate Professor Loy Hui Chieh from the Philosophy Department. I've been teaching for the department since 2006. The first piece of advice I'll give is don't do the multiple choice unless you know what is it you're trying to target with questions of this nature, right? There are important affordances and there are also certain kinds of limitations that you need to be aware of. What's the most important affordance? Automated marking is a very important affordance, right? And what it means is that you're picking a mode of assessment where most of the work comes in you setting the questions and giving generalized feedback rather than in marking. It's very different from setting an essay question where it doesn't take me very long to come up with an essay question. I can do it in like less than a minute, right? But then marking it is where the real work is, right? Because you want to give very careful comments and to each individual answer. But MCQs are very different. You spend a lot of time and effort trying to come up with a good question. The marking is automated, and then you spend some time providing general feedback to everyone, right? And this use scenario is good for certain cases, but it's not as powerful for certain other cases. So people need to be aware of this. So that's point number one I will make. If you do think that this is a good use case scenario, and remember, MCQs, students are not expected to express themselves, right? Their expression is limited to the options on the screen. So that means that you know that if what you're trying to train is expression, this is a really weird way to give them an assessment, isn't it, right? But on the other hand, it's extremely powerful in just checking on precise and careful understanding. So it's not so much the expression part, but the thinking and understanding part. MCQs are among some of the better ways. It's not the only possible way, but it's one very, very powerful way. But once you understand that this is the use scenario, then you design the questions accordingly. You are trying to check for very careful and precise understanding of the thing that we have taught you, and the inferences that you can draw or shouldn't draw from the content that we have taught you, right? So, by the way, the inferences that you should draw and shouldn't draw is important too, because sometimes students think they understand something, but what they really got was they got a bunch of words in their head, right? They know how to reproduce certain words, right? Or they can recognize certain words, but that's not the same as understanding. If you really understood what what was actually said in the reading, or we mentioned it in the lecture, we discussed it, it means that you will be able to see these ideas in different contexts, right? And to see that even though the words are changed, but you recognize that, hey, the idea is here. Or for that matter, you see some words that look as if it's the stuff you read in the textbook, but then if you look at it carefully and you realize that, no, that wasn't what it was all about at all, right? That is the thing I'm trying to get the students to be able to have, which is understanding, which is not the same as just being able to reproduce words. Right. MCQs can be very powerful for that. Yeah. So let me answer this first, and I'll come back to the design of the questions a little bit more later, right? Because I think that these things are bound up with each other actually, right? So these questions are open world in the sense that you are allowed to pretty much talk to anyone you want and read whatever you want when you answer them, because you have a whole week to do each of these quizzes. There are only a few questions, 8 questions per week across 10 different weeks. So it's not a lot of work, but students typically spend hours. I know this because they told us, right? They spend hours debating with each other. Some of them will try to email you at the last minute to say, my friends and I couldn't agree on whether it's option A or B. Prof. Loy, please give us a hint. And you know that they are taking this quite seriously because the questions, in a sense, catches their interest. It makes them realize that there is a certain angle to the thing they thought they understood from the lecture, but now we are really pressing them. You really understand that? Now, if you really understand this, let me throw you a different context. Let me tell you a story. Let me give you a narrative. Let me describe this scenario that we did not talk about in the class. And we ask you, given the definition that was introduced in class, does this apply to what this person said in the story? Does it apply to what the other person said? But that's how the world is, right? The world doesn't come to us in neat definitions. You walk on the street or you debate with people on social media, people don't just trot out like things from the textbook. People, say all kinds of things. And when you do things, when you try to think about the world, when you try to operate in it, you have to learn to figure out that, no, this applies, that doesn't apply. No, this is not like that. This is actually more like it than it is, and so on and so forth. So yes, I deliberately designed the question in such a way that it's never about just whether this idea applies. It's always whether this idea applies, but in a context where there's a lot of extra information, right? I mean, it's not over the board because we do want to make sure that they don't have to read 5 pages just to answer one question, you know. But it's usually it's like almost half a A4 page, 11-point font. That is the length of a typical slightly longer question. It can be shorter, but that is quite typical, right? And it's like a storyline. It's like several people talking to each other. And if we can't think of any superhero stories idea, we run out of those, then the easiest way is to just have 5 students discussing a concept that we introduce in class, and Will will say, no, but I think Prof. Lai was saying this, and then the other person will say, no, I think he's, I mean, even if you have to come up with a completely boring story like that, it will still work. And then given this load of excess information, we ask, was Dave really being a consequentialist when he said that? Really? Jean, she seems to disagree with Dave. Was what she said, really this or that or whatever? So that's the question. And by the way, there's only supposed to be one correct answer. We design all the questions in such a way that it's supposed to be only one correct answer. If the students spotted an ambiguity, or they came to us after the thing is over and they say that, oh, actually I understood the sentence to mean this rather than that, and we look at it carefully and we say, you know what, we missed that ambiguity. We'll give you the point. We will do it. It will take us a little bit more work to update the back end, but that's only fair because we're not trying to, it's not about you divining our thoughts. It's about you understanding ideas, right? And if it turns out that we miss a certain ambiguity, we'll give you the point. We'll give everyone who selected that point, actually. We've done that regularly. Usually maybe about 10% of the questions, in a bad semester, shall we say, maybe about 10% of the questions will be updated. And to me, I would rather have that. Yeah, I don't want the student to feel as if, no, it's just about trying to figure out, what these people think. No. It's about you trying to understand the ideas. So there are different kinds of limitations. I'm very keenly aware of them. I already mentioned one already. MCQs are terrible at testing for certain kinds of things. If what you want is for your students to learn expression, don't give them MCQs, make them write stuff. Or make them present something, right? So there's no question about that. But that is something that we have known from the beginning. So when you choose a mode like this, you know that you cannot do certain things. Some people will tell me, then why not just make them write their rationale? I say, yeah, you just converted my MCQ into an essay question. I mean, what's the difference? Okay, so that's one part. But there are other issues as well, and we need to be very aware of this. This is not so much the MCQ, it's more to do with the open world concept. So since the questions are debated among the students, there is a real danger, and this is a very, very real danger, that some students, I will even say a big chunk of the students, will treat the discussions more as a method for me to try to get the correct answer in the sense of the answer that will get me the mark, rather than the platform for me to learn. And even in the heart of the students themselves, I don't believe that all of them are fully aware that perhaps this is what they are doing actually, right? If you treat this method as a way for us to crowdsource answers, yeah, you will get answers, but have you gotten the understanding? You haven't really maximized, the students haven't fully maximized the platform for the real purpose, the big purpose, right? But don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that this is even if they remain at this level, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that they haven't quite gotten all the value. They have built bonds, they have, make friends, they have learned who in life they should emulate, which is not a bad skill, okay? But they haven't actually fully gotten into the understanding. The ones who, on the other hand, insist on standing their ground, insist on disagreeing with their peers, but still insist on discussing with them, ironically, they are the ones who have a bit more of an independence, right? So they are there, in a sense, to defend their own ground. They believe in their own answers, right? So ironically, I think, well, maybe there's no irony. I think maybe it's kind of obvious. They are the ones who actually got more out of the quizzes, actually, of the discussion part of the quizzes. Yeah. So that is a serious limitation because it's very difficult for us to, through the structure, force you to do one rather than the other. This is about your own motivation. Right? I cannot set a certain assessment structure where literally this motivational issue can be simply sorted out, and somehow you have no choice but to do one or the other. It's not that easy.